Welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Friday night. And my goodness, if you are a Twins fan, welfare check. Wow. Yesterday was something I have not seen as a sports fan in my entire life. I did not grow up in Minnesota, so maybe that's how things go here. Somebody that does know Minnesota sports is Jim Souhan, a sports columnist for the Star Tribune for a very long time. Jim, initial thoughts as to trading away 40% of the Twins roster?
It's depressing. It's frustrating. I really don't have expectations that this franchise is going to win a World Series or at least win anytime soon. I care about meaningful baseball. I want the games to matter. And, when they traded Paddock on Monday, it was clear that none of the games the rest of this season were going to matter. And then I expected them to make a couple trades at the deadline. I did not expect 10 players. And I think we have to, it's easier to just say, oh, they traded 10 players. This is capitulation. This is pathetic. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I do also think we need to be more specific about what happened here. They made three different kinds of trades. They traded the kind of players that everybody trades at the deadline if you don't think you're in contention. Harrison Bader, Chris Paddock, people who are at the end of one-year contracts or end of short contracts. They aren't going to be back. You might as well get something for them if you don't think you're contending the rest of this year. Those deals are fine. I think the Carlos Correa deal, I think getting out from under that what had become a terrible contract, really the only way it could happen, which is trading him to Houston when Houston had a dire need for an infielder on the left side of the infield and it's an independent race, and Correa is willing to waive his no-trade clause. I actually think that was a great deal, just to get out from under that contract, because Correa did not play well this year and he's only going to get older. It's the other deals that are really frustrating for anybody who cares about watching baseball. Willie Castro, one of the best players the last 2 years, instead of trying to sign him to a long-term deal, they trade him for very low value. At least I think very low value. Yoan Duran, the guy they developed into being an all-star closer, young, affordable, could have been their closer next year, would have been one of the best players. Instead, they trade him for prospects. And going on, Griffin Jacks, closer stuff. You traded him, and Louis Varland, very young. Lots of years of control left, very inexpensive, could be a future closer, could be a future dominant setup man. You traded him as well. I think those and Brock Stewart's a little different because he's had injury problems. You can see them trying to trade him at high value. But trading your three best bullpen arms who are all young, affordable, and controllable, those are the ones I think people should be the most upset with.
Yeah, and I've seen several things from both the Star Tribune, national media, grading these trades. They range from A's to F's, definitely, but in the F category for fans. I'm, a sports fan and have been for a long time. And in sports, you're told to trust the process when you're an athlete. But if I'm a fan of the Minnesota Twins right now and I look at what just happened, am I to trust this process? How do I keep my faith?
That to me is the key question here, because you can justify, they're smart people, and you can justify this philosophically. Well, this team has not performed well in the last year, and we didn't think this team as constituted was going to compete next year necessarily without some tweaks. We're going to make changes, and you can tell that story. Here are the problems. We pretty much know that they sold off in part to save the Pohlads money on the Pohlads way out of town. The Pohlads, have a lot of debt. This clears up some of the debt, clears the decks a little bit for the new owner. But you talk about trusting the process. There is a way of always kicking the can down the road, always saying, well, we have prospects coming. Well, let's trade and let's get more prospects. At some point, you need to plant the flag and try to win. And I would argue that you try to win when you have an all-star center fielder and an all-star caliber shortstop and a third baseman who should eventually be a superstar, even though he's been struggling crazily lately. And you had an all-star closer, you had a dynamic bullpen, you have a very good catcher, you have top prospects getting closer to the major leagues. At some point, you have to win and stop just accumulating A-ball players who may never make the majors, who may never be anything.
There have been several questions floating around, Jim, on is this the work of the Pohlads or is this the work of a new owner? We don't know their name or identity yet.
It just makes no sense for a front office to make personnel moves for someone who hasn't cut the check and been approved. These are high-level negotiations. These are not handshake deals. You don't just say, boy, I think the new owner might like this. Maybe I'll try this.
Okay.
I think it's much more about the Pohlads saving money in a season where they don't think they can compete, saving money for the future. Really, the only one of these deals that makes any sense in terms of the new owner is getting out from under Correa's deal, but that also works really well for the Pohlads. So you don't let somebody who hasn't taken control of the team make personnel decisions. You just don't. The Pohlads do want to save money on this team right now, and the front office, I think they really had given up on this group of players, and they really want to start over. Now, to defend them to a certain extent, they did retain most of their starting pitching, which should be a strength going forward. They still have Buxton. They still have Royce Lewis. They have some top prospects getting close to the big leagues. But again, when you trade your whole bullpen for future prospects, it's hard for me to believe they can be a better team next year or maybe even the year after. So what you're saying is, hey, trust that this is going to play out. I've been through 2 major rebuilds covering the Twins. They started rebuilding in 1993. They weren't good again until 2001. They weren't in the playoffs again until 2002. They rebuilt starting in 2011 when they realized they had no pitching. And that, they had a blip in 2015, a blip in 2017. They weren't really good again until 2019. It's easy to say you're going to rebuild. It's easy to say you're going to turn things around. It's really hard to do.
And you wonder about, in today's fractured attention span of people and fans and having choice in a market this big, I mean, my goodness, how do you sell tickets? How do you sell season tickets when you're just like, trust us, it could take a decade? I just don't see it. I don't see how they become profitable as a good fan experience.
I mean, of course they want to sell as many tickets as possible. Of course attendance matters. Honestly, it doesn't matter to them as much as the television revenues and everything else. Of course, now I'm not saying they don't care about it. Of course they care about it. But they feel like they have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the best interest of the team long term. And that's how they're justifying this. But they will take a hit at the box office unless next year's team really surprises us. And they have lost the faith of a very pessimistic fan base. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with front offices doing what they believe is right, even if the fans don't react well. Tim Connolly's done that a lot, and he's pulled it off. I'm just not sure I believe in exactly what they did this time around.
The Twins, to me, have always felt like this hometown team, all of Minnesota behind them. And today, last night, feels like the whole state went through this mass layoff. And that you show up to work the next day with the few people who are left, and management tells you, trust the process. We've got this. It's okay. Still wear your cap, and we're still Twins territory around here. But it's hard to not feel like I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the real problem is you have a new owner coming in. They've missed the playoffs for 4 of the last 5 years, and now they're saying, okay, we're going to fix this, but it's going to take time. Well, as I wrote about in the Friday Star Tribune, one of the problems here is that Falvey's plan has failed. They've been a really bad team for the last calendar year. They were pretty promising as of August 5th of last year. It looked like they're on quite a run. They collapsed last year. They played well in May. That's the only month in the last calendar year they've played well. Then they collapsed again. And it's just hard for me to believe that you're going to keep a handful of good players, trade away half the roster, bring in a bunch of younger players, save money, and get better. It's theoretically possible. I'm not really buying it.
Does this make the team attractive to a new owner, or do you think they already know who the owner is and we're just not ready to say yet?
We believe that there is a leader in the clubhouse and that there's a very good chance of him getting the deal done. But let's be realistic here. We're talking about saving a little bit of money in the realm of billionaires. We're talking about saving a little bit of money right before somebody writes a check for about $2 billion. If somebody is ready to buy a Major League Baseball franchise for $2 billion, they are not saying, oh, better trade Louis Varland. He might make $2 million next year. Okay, these are completely different things, completely different stratospheres. So I just think the speculation about the new owner is easy, but I don't think it's accurate. I think if somebody spends $2 billion on a team, they're going to want to win, and they're not going to mind spending money on the payroll.
Let's hope.
I mean, why would you buy the team for $2 billion if you were worried about losing $5 million, $10 million here if that's what it takes to win? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, because I don't know anybody that would, that's not the game that's played. When these billionaires, these people with deep pockets get into playing ball, Justin and Matasheba, for example, like they want to win and they want to win now.
Right. And the problem with those guys is they wanted to win too badly. They tried to do everything too quickly in Phoenix. They didn't really put together a good team. They just spent money. That's the other danger. There are two kinds of bad owners. There are those that spend like crazy, meddle, and mess things up, and those who just don't spend enough. The Polites, obviously the former. The fan base has to hope they can thread the needle and get an owner who will spend a lot of money and hire the right people if he makes a change, but without meddling and pretending he knows more about the game than the people in the game. It's hard to find those people. When you do, they're gold.
All right, last question. What's your message for Twins fans at this time? What should they be?
I'll see you in 4 years.
Jim.
Here's what I'll say. It's hard to be hopeful right now. I'm really not hopeful right now. I'm not optimistic, and I usually try to be optimistic because it's so easy to be pessimistic in this market about baseball. They still have some good players. There's still a tightrope they can walk and be a good team going forward, and having saved money for this franchise. But those are, that's kind of pie in the sky stuff. That's just if everything goes perfectly. How often do things go perfectly for this franchise? I don't blame people if they turn their attention to the Minnesota Lynx and the Minnesota Vikings for the rest of this summer.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Jim Souhan with the Star Tribune, sports columnist. Check out his work today on the Twins, and there was a lot to write about. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Thanks, Jana.
See you later. Have a good weekend, y'all. We'll see you back on Breaking the News and Breaking the News Plus on Monday.